You remember when the SEC used to talk down to the Big 12 about it was a track meet and it was not real football, and yet somehow now the Big 12's turned into the Smash Mouth Conference while the SEC is putting up 70 burgers all the time. I think Brett Yormark has been on to something, being a visionary, and this continues to grow legs.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more, especially right now when new customers can get $200 back in bonus bets when your first $5 hauler is a winner. Get with FanDuel today. Meanwhile, we're going to jump into the conversation of Brett Yormark being a visionary, the visionary that we needed in this conference. Ironically enough, some of the things that he was at the forefront of, he's catching flack now. We also got to talk about the NCAA versus House settlement and the revenue share, what kind of gap that could potentially bring us. But I'm no expert in these matters, so we're going to bring on an expert. Nathan, Bomber, Brown, Big 12 Mafia, brother man, how are we feeling today, sir?
I feel pretty good. I've been tired. The last week and a half has been a track meet with all the news breaking, all the college. Isn't this ironic? All this is happening when the NCAA basketball is tuning up for the tournament. It's amazing to me. They're stealing their thunder.
Yeah, timing is everything. Now, we could, of course, talk about the networks and how they have their hands in cookie jars that they probably don't belong in, but we're going to get to some of that. I wanted to talk a little bit before we get to the meat and taters section of that stuff. Okay. When it comes to Brett Yormark, what is it with these other conferences feeling the need to throw shade at the Big 12's way and Brett Yormark? They were calling us a rinky-dink conference for talking about having the naming rights or doing the private equity. Now you're hearing the Big 10 and potentially the SEC is also having the same conversations about the private equity. Why is it that the Big 12 continuously gets slammed by the vaunted SEC, yet the SEC falls in line and does a lot of the Big 12 things, not to mention the halftime show that Brett Yormark was putting forth, the changing of the Big 12 media days. SEC found a way to kind of steal some of that thunder by tipping down into Dallas as well. Right. Why is it that everything Brett Yormark says is good? Other conferences say that's childish, that's rinky-dink, and then they end up doing it. What is happening, Bomber?
Well, House blew everything up. Everybody needs money. And when you have Ohio State and Oregon sending out letters saying, we need your support to keep this program going, that's a laugh, right? That's a joke compared to a BYU or Oklahoma State. It just shows you money, money, money. And Brett Yormark, the reason they're bagging on him is he was the visionary. Came into the Big 12, threw out all these ideas, and everybody else is stealing them. But, you know, when you have kids, and I know you have kids, it's not the thing you talk about people focus on. It's the one-star thing. And I think that's it, is they're focused on just what helps them and ignoring all the history, like Paul Feinbaum and his ridiculous takes.
So whenever you're looking at Brett Yormark in the Big 12, what do you think is the next step? So obviously he's put these ideas out there, and now you're seeing other conferences kind of pick up on it. When does Brett Yormark equal the next phase of his plan and actually start the implementation? Because it was a great idea to begin with, and now you're having other conferences steal it. Wouldn't it be kind of problematic if they were to implement it before Brett Yormark, even though it was his idea?
I don't think so. The reason we've had all this movement is because the ACC Great Compromise came out. That was a tipping point. Certainly for the Big 12, it was a tipping point because we're coveting a lot of those brands to come in and keep our conference vital and important. Everybody else was waiting on that too. And once that settlement number came out, 184, 168, whatever that was, now everybody knows it wasn't going to cost as much to leave the ACC. Now the ACC is in complete flux, which then destabilizes, or at least they say it destabilizes the Big Ten and the SEC. And in doing that, it's just a big game of dominoes. So that's what everybody's been waiting on. Plus, there's all these government things, the House settlement and Congress and
Right.
the new A4P4 rules and all that fun stuff.
So before we dive into some of that stuff, do you think that with the ACC going through its turmoil, right, it's going to equal more realignment more often than not? Because whenever you look at it, Clemson's going to be happy, North Carolina, Miami,
Florida
State. Those are all teams that are going to be happy because of the way that it's going to be structured now.
More than likely.
They're going to get more viewership. They're going to get more dollars. But what about your Georgia Techs, your Louisvilles, your Virginia Techs? There's no way they can be sitting back looking at this thinking that it's absolutely phenomenal for them as well.
Well, no, they're going to be selling themselves.
Brett Yormark to start to kind of chop down the ACC tree. He was able to kill the Pac-12. Would he continue the visionary process by doing the same thing to the ACC essentially?
Yeah, you lagged out there for a second, so I think I spoke over you a little bit. I'm sorry, Cody. I think at the end of the day, if we're talking about just Big 12 focused stuff, everybody needs to know we're in a strong position. We're not destabilized. Everybody's together. We have a leader that's a visionary. He's been in big business, led Rock Nation, a NASCAR, global billion dollar entities. He knows how to get this done. It just takes time. Now, you and I both know he was trying to sell Gonzaga and UConn, right? Yeah. And he put them together. You and I were kind of like, we want football brands, right? But now, again, with the ACC being destable, I have like 20 paths I could chart out for you. I do see a path where maybe those schools are back in play, or at least the ACC schools that could come in would then help drive our value going further forth. Into the future.
Now, if that were to take place, do you take one of the traditional ACC schools, or do you even approach the conversation of perhaps taking in an SMU? Because financially, it's not like it would be difficult to get the services of SMU, I wouldn't imagine.
Do I have the way to share my screen? Can I do a little display? Let me see if I can do this. I'll show you. I'll show you exactly why you pick one over the other. By the way, this was compiled and put together. You'll have to put it on the screen.
Oh.
Okay, that's viewership for the ACC. If you've seen it from anywhere, it was copied and pasted from College Football Mafia, Wild Ute University, the Wild Ute on Twitter.
Wild Ute.
Look down there at the bottom. Do you know what 0.25 represents? 250,000 people watched a game. Every game.
Really?
That's the average. Look at the top. Who are we talking about?
That
at
is
the top?
Terrible.
And this is your viewership numbers, right? This isn't talking about any other values.
Wow.
That's your football viewership. So that right there should sort of wake people up and say, we need to make a business decision based on viewership. Now, this is a 5-year average, right?
Okay.
In the next 5 years, if nobody leaves the ACC, these numbers could change. Certainly North Carolina is doing a hard push to move up, but a school like a Pitt or a Syracuse or a Duke might do whatever they can to get those numbers up because they know they're going to be on the market for it. They have to pay $75 million, but they'll be, which is nothing.
Right.
What we're talking about, $75 million in 2030, and they can go in the open market. So sorry about that. I didn't mean to take over your show,
I'm insanely appreciative because I didn't really understand the numbers behind what they were talking about.
Yeah,
but
this is just viewership. This isn't revenue or anything.
Yeah, but a lot of the argument is going to be predicated upon just that, right? The viewership and what that is going to equal to the potential profitability of your university. So putting it in context like that is awesome. Another thing to put into context is definitely got to be what is happening with the NCAA. And I know you've been running around like crazy today, kind of making the rounds, covering all of this, which is precisely why I wanted to have you on. But before we do that, my brother, man, I do have to remind the fine folks out here that not everything in life has to be complicated. Sometimes getting the right supplies at the right time is what's best for you. It is the summer months where you're going to have some things that you need to get out and get squared away with. Getting supplies that you need for skilled trades is with Supply House, and it's here for you. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to offer products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to get you help and the job done right. Plus, with a competitive inventory of over 200,000 parts of 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros out here looking for the extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every single order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already talking about the advantages. Now it is going to be your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few short clicks. Use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your order at supplyhouse.com, where you're going to be able to get everything that you need to stay on top of all of the craziness that's going to be happening around your house. In addition to that, we would be remiss if we didn't also talk about your capabilities with Wayfair. Again, it's going to be clutter time, cleaning out clutter time. So get in with Wayfair's huge selection that's going to make it easier for you to find the perfect pieces no matter your space or budget. From cozy furniture to stylish decor and kitchen essentials, the outdoor must-haves, Wayfair's the one-stop shop for all prices that are going to fit your budget. Find the perfect piece. Whether you're looking for a new rug to tie the living room together or something specific for your kitchen, your patio, it doesn't matter. The stylish options and great prices make this the best option for you. More than just furniture, right? You're going to be surprised that you can find everything from storage solutions to patio decor and make it the go-to for all things in your home. Head on over to wayfair.com and find something that's just for your style today. That is Wayfair, WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home, no matter what, just for you. Okay, buddy, let's dig into the conversation that is obviously permeating around the country that you're very familiar with, and break this down for us. What does this NCAA versus House settlement mean? I've seen some of the figures. Was like $2.8 billion or something that effect.
2.28.
Okay,
yeah.
And it's going to be distributed amongst many different ways because there's also some back pay components that are part of this, but
Yes.
it doesn't necessarily pertain to what things are going to be doing moving forward. So give us a brief synopsis on what you think this means and financially how it could all break down.
I was just talking about this on my show, ironically. I need to create a Venn diagram, massive diagram, because the House settlement is a tipping point for so many things.
Okay.
The new governance that's been talked about, the new A4P4 rules are going to be based on the baseline that the House settlement is creating, right? Then
Yes,
you
sir.
have who's in the power conferences. You know, Oregon State and Washington State put their hand up. I think they should be in a power conference, but are they in it or not? And then we have all these concerns with Congress. Congress is deliberating. The NCAA wants their antitrust exemption back to control player salaries. That's going to affect what the rulings are on the House settlement, which will in turn then affect how people are getting paid. The NIL versus NIL's third party,
Right,
versus the profit sharing, revenue sharing. 20.5 million right now for the revenue sharing. That money comes from the school and could be divvied up in any school, any sports, any sanctioned sports.
Roger that.
Third party NIL is, Joe Blow Tires comes in and says, Cody Stovall, I want to give him money. It's pay for play. I don't care what people call it. You're paying players to go to your school. And right now they're talking about potentially putting in a salary cap on one or the other or both, or just ideas.
So one of the things that I find slightly intriguing about all of this is the idea that they're going to have a third-party company essentially monitor the compensation, and you mentioned something about a salary cap. But whether there's a salary cap or not, there is going to be this entity that is in charge of overseeing things of that nature.
Deloitte.
Meanwhile, the NCAA
Yeah.
is going to stick with the eligibility, the academics.
Right.
This is something that Greg Sankey, right, did mention years back as being a potential possibility. I'm kind of amazed that it is actually getting to this level. But at one point in time, the NCAA was an organization that did things more or less the right way, right?
Yeah.
And they legitimately just wanted to make sure there was some semblance of an even playing field. But I think it's been indicative over the years of even they have been corrupted in part of this whole disaster, because in basketball, like Oklahoma State recently went through a suspension. We were on a year of probation. We were banned from the postseason, so on and so forth.
Right.
Well, in that same year, we were caught with a $300 infraction. Meanwhile, schools like LSU and Memphis and several schools on the East Coast, they had hundreds and hundreds of emails of illegal recruiting and tampering, and nothing happened to them. I mean, I love Bill Self. He's a former Cowboy, but even KU is wrapped up in a lot of this Adidas craziness, and they got a slap on the wrist. Not even that. It's a slap on the pinky finger. So if we know that the corruptibility happened within the NCAA, how do we expect this third-party entity to not eventually be corrupted as well? And if so, how long are we looking at?
You're talking about the committee that is going to create the regulations, the governance that controls everything. Yeah, that's a committee of the Power Four and Washington State and Oregon State presidents and whatever. And they're basically going to tell the NCAA, you stay in your lane, basketball. We want to control everything, right? And this new entity, we don't have time to go into what that could look like. There's so many options, but this third party is now, the government just laid off 3,000 FBI agents. They need enforcement. The NCAA might just go and hire all those FBI agents that were laid off and say, we need you in the system to go out and enforce the rules, which they haven't flushed out all the rules yet. So I think the NCAA is on borrowed time, frankly. I don't like the NCAA. I have a lot of problems with it, like you do.
Yep.
Maybe for different issues. The one thing I'm most concerned about is the antitrust exemption they're trying to get back from Congress, so they can tell everybody no more free transfers, no more money from NIL. They can put a cap on stuff, and that would be a disaster.
Well, to my knowledge, the only thing that's holding this ordeal from completely removing the NCAA is the minute details, the academics and things of that nature. Do you think that the NCAA will have some ability, if they get that antitrust capabilities, to kind of scoot in on this third-party entity?
Absolutely.
And you think, does it appear as though that is kind of their plan, because they realize they're becoming a useless, feckless organization at this point in time?
Well, they've been screaming for years, Congress, help, help, help. I mean, literally, they're putting their hand up saying, we need protection from Congress. They're now in front of Congress this week and last week, and they're begging for support, and they're getting pushback, because if they get that antitrust exemption back, it will be able to roll back all the player pay stuff, and it'll become very stratified. And the players aren't going to get near as much money as they have a potential now. That's one feature of it. The controls of the money is then what would dictate the rules that you're mentioning. Eligibility, foreign players, some of these other things.
Right.
The A4 wants to take over those rules too, Kobe.
See, I'm not against it. My only issue is, how do you prevent it from being corrupted? Because
money corrupts all, so I don't know the answer to that.
Exactly. Thank you very much. You stole the words right out of my mouth.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. And before we kind of shift gears here into segment 3 and talk about some of the revenue share and how you think that could potentially help close some gaps, or is it going to open more gaps? Right. And this isn't really anything to do with even the 105 roster limit, which you could theoretically tie into some of this. But the number I've seen, it's been floating around 20.5 up to 22. Where is that monetary value coming from? Is it from the lawsuit?
The House settlement.
Okay.
So basically, each school, they averaged it out, and it was 20.5 million.
Oh,
is how much it would cost to keep going, to participate. They're not receiving they're paying that out. That 20.5 million. So where the school comes up with it, I don't know. Maybe you guys have gold buried in the backyard. Each school and conference is going to have to come up with that money on their own. Or they can put their hand in the air and you say, no, what? This is just not that important to us. Pull everything back and let's become a, more whatever school, right? Not a major football playing, certainly.
Well, what I'm trying to do here is establish a relationship and a rapport with BYU country, because there's got to be some Cougar alumni out there that would love to see Oklahoma State capitalize. I mean, of course, right?
I don't know. We're doing pretty good raising our own capital right now.
We need a BYU boon, Bomber.
I'm going to tell you right now, Oklahoma State has probably, them and Texas Tech, you guys in Texas Tech have the deepest pockets. Not necessarily in money by individual people, but you have the most people connected with football programs. You guys can put a stake in the ground and say, hey guys, we need this oil money, or we need this range money, or whatever. I think Oklahoma State's going to be just fine.
Well, we're going through it right now to some degree, and I don't know if we've got a lot of revenue to share, which I guess is a decent segue for us. So before we get to some of the rev share and that conversational piece, one thing I do have to kind of mention to all of the fine folks out here is it's money-making season, and March Madness is upon us, NBA season. This is your opportunity. FanDuel is the bee's knees for all of your potential monetary needs. And of course, March Madness is finally right around the corner, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 back in bonus bets when your first $5 hauler is a winner. That is 200 bones back and extra bucks that you can use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and who's going to cut down the nets at the very end. You have to keep an eye on some of the underdogs, because that is always the storyline. Who's going to be the Cinderella story? And FanDuel is going to help you back them with spreads, totals, and game props. Staying in the action with tournament games happens almost every single day, and there's always something exciting for you to be able to bet on. The FanDuel app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. You're going to get paid instantly with no waiting around. So just visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Do not miss your opportunity to get the most bang for your buck during March Madness. I know the BYU Coug Nation loves betting, or wishes they could do some betting. I don't know which one it is, but
hey, I'm not gonna like expose anybody, but I know quite a few bettors in BYU.
I like it. See, it's actually a good thing. When you're betting on yourself, as this revenue share will likely allow everybody to do.
Different kind of betting.
Yes, yes. Well, so I guess my question would be, in the revenue sharing thing, if everything is going to be the same amount, everybody's going to get roughly 20.5-ish, right around that range.
Right.
How does that help open or close some gaps for other universities? You mentioned Oklahoma State, Texas Tech being some of those universities that have some of that oil money that you could potentially dip into. But to my knowledge, the revenue share will be somewhat different than the NIL, or is it all kind of tied in together from what you're getting?
Do you know who Jamie Pollard is?
I do.
The Iowa State AD posted something yesterday, and it was a report about Arizona State. It got $51.7 million from their legislature to feed their athletic program. And Iowa State's putting their hand up and saying, what? Right? Looking around saying, what, can we do that? Right?
Yeah.
And raising the alarm. And I made a comment right after he posted it. I'm like, this shocks me, because it shocks me either he didn't know what the number was going to be. And then I'm like, you're so plugged into the Big 12. You're on the committees and you have all this power. You didn't have an idea that Arizona State was being funded by their. I'm just telling you right now, all four of the Pacific Conference schools that came in, they are getting that money because they had run deficits in the Pac-12. So they have to close the gap. Next year, they're not going to get $51.7 million. It's just this year. But what it does, it draws attention to the fact some states have money. They can turn around with their tax revenue and turn their state colleges loose, not the privates, but the state colleges loose, and give them all kinds of money and let them go into debt. Or you have to look around and say, are we really willing to commit. And that, in my opinion, is what at first is going to start filtering out who's going to be in the final thing. Minimum requirements to participate.
Right.
Minimum dollars spent on your NIL and revenue sharing. You asked revenue sharing. Let me get one more thing. Revenue sharing is the part that the school pays out. Third party NIL, right now, it's just everybody put your hand up and get $5 million, right? Those two things are separate, and yet there's this Deloitte, who's the accounting firm, Deloitte clearinghouse that was announced that's going to be doing monitoring. So I'll ask you a question. You're now you're playing for Oklahoma State as a pitcher, and you've got a YouTube show, and you get $1,000 back from doing that YouTube show once a month. Do you feel like you have to report that to the Deloitte clearinghouse? Because that's what everybody's supposed to do.
Okay. All right. I got it.
They're not regulating or stopping anything right now. They're counting. They're trying to set some legal precedent so then they can make decisions later for salary caps and stuff. It's in preparation for doing those things.
And some of the irony there is the NCAA, what we talked about in the last segment, is looking for help from Congress and things of that nature. When all of this NIL conversation began, there was no guardrails. And the NCAA wasn't even trying to help facilitate what guardrails could potentially look like.
Well, they put their hands up, but when they lost that lawsuit, they threw their hands in the air and said, this is uncontrollable. We don't know what to do. And for 2 years now, it's just been crazy talk, right? But now with this new governance, A4P4, they're trying to rein that in.
So how would certain universities end up losing out on this revenue share ordeal? Is it if a university doesn't have the ability to come up with the 20.5?
Right, they can't spend to the maximum.
Got you. Okay.
Every power school plus Washington State and Oregon State, by settling the lawsuit, opted in. They're immediately in. They would have to put their hand up and opt out at this point. And any school that wasn't in the lawsuit has to opt in. So that's where these opt-ins and opts out. North Dakota State opted in.
Really?
Right? North Dakota, I think I'm right. Somebody can correct me, but I think one of those FCS programs opted into this house settlement. And where Montana State, I can't remember who it was, but they're not one of the power football brands, and yet they want to pay their players. By signing in, opting in, you now know guidelines. You now know, there's structure around paying your people. They want to pay their pitchers. That's so it's a completely different world if you're not in the P5. P4
do you think that potentially that if there's another round of realignment, which seems somewhat inevitable with the ACC influx,
right?
Don't you think that the next round of realignment, some of these revenue sharing capabilities will be factored into that? Like, for example, let's say Houston, right? We know that they're only spending $2 million on football NIL, which is absolute insanity.
I think that will change.
So okay. So if there's some realignment conversations, and let's say Houston and, just for example, Oklahoma State, Houston and Oklahoma State are not willing to pay the $20 million, or they don't have the ability to pay the $20 million. But let's say a Florida State, or not Florida State, Georgia Tech and a Pitt or a Louisville do you think that becomes part of the conversation to remain relevant in the Power 3 conference structure?
Well, and that's where I think we're going. We're going to settle. It is going to be a 3. What the final number is, 60 to 72. I'm already on record. That's my opinion. And yes, I think that will be some of the filters. That absolutely will make a difference. We just don't know how much of a difference. It depends on the schools, right? There's some ACC schools that have endowments in the tens of billions of dollars, right?
Yes.
Virginia. But are they going to put $30 million? How much did Ohio State have to pay to win the national championship? Remember when that number came out right after the game?
No.
It was north of 35 million. So do this math.
Oh, and NIL and
and money from the school to support operations and whatnot.
That's insane, bro.
So do the math. 20.5 million is roughly half of what Ohio State just paid. That they have to pay 20.5 million. And the balance, the 15 million, is coming from the third party and advertisers and other things. So it makes a ton of sense if you think about it. The numbers have
and
always
that's
been
not
out
going to
there.
change, right? You're
Well,
still
the
going to
number's
have.
going to go up.
Okay.
The 20.5 is going to absolutely, because of inflation. Every year it'll probably, well, maybe not college. I don't know how college will do it, but the NFL issues a new number every year.
I'll be darned. Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much for some of this
Sure.
clarification.
I hope that helped. I know we're talking about a bunch of stuff and people get confused. That's not on
No,
purpose, I promise.
it helped me tremendously because, yeah, sifting through some of the information, it can get slightly convoluted. And if you don't know
Right.
precisely what you're looking at and have some context behind it, it does make it difficult. And
Right.
being as the guy who has a difficulty speaking the English language, I'm appreciative when somebody else can come on and help break some of this stuff down to a level that makes it make the most amount of sense. In the Army, we call it the KISS method.
Keep it simple, stupid, baby.
Yeah, so thank you for coming on and
You
helping
bet.
keep it simple for the stupidity that I sometimes spew out of the mouth. And lastly, brother man, before I skedaddle on off of here, what is your outlook for BYU football in this upcoming season? I know this is a random boomerang curveball for you,
Right.
but in the bipolar Big 12, can we rely on the product that is BYU, or is there the potential that y'all could end up in an Oklahoma State situation where you have 20 returning starters that completely poop down their legs?
That's always a possibility. It doesn't matter how good your structure, your coach is, right? That in the Big 12 especially, that could always happen. But I will tell you this, and I'm on record, you know this. I think BYU is going to be one of, in 5-6 years, BYU is going to be one of the outstanding brands, if it's not already in the Big 12, carry banner type of brands like some of the ones you and I both agree on.
Yeah.
And they're not going anywhere. I say we are not going anywhere, right?
Right.
We are all in and have been all in for 50 years. So
it's kind of funny that, you hear the terminology sleeping giant.
right.
That's what your fan base always has been. And the fact that BYU's been excluded from some of the major conference conversations over the course of the years,
Right.
it makes no sense. So
Yeah.
I think that the Big 12 and Brett Yormark, we were talking earlier about him being a visionary. Maybe you do need some blue bloods, and maybe the closest thing we have to a blue blood might be BYU. There's no might be. It is. You're the closest thing we have historically to the blue blood conversation that has the fan base all across the world that could help kind of perpetuate some of that.
I never heard it put that way. I appreciate your description. I'm not sure I'm really anxious when I try to describe what that is for BYU because we love the Big 12, right? And we are fully committed. And so we're a team player. But yes, I think BYU absolutely has the opportunity to earn that place in the Big 12. Yes.
Well, I'm appreciative of BYU because I don't know if you saw earlier, Utah fans are still talking crap about the Big 12.
Yeah, I know.
I absolutely don't get it. I took a screenshot of it earlier, but there was Utah fans calling this the poverty conference and how embarrassing it is to be in here. I can't believe that is still happening because last time I checked, they had a disastrous football season. They're terrible at basketball.
Yeah.
The women's team might sneak into the tournament. But other than that, I don't know what Utah brings to the table. They're not any good in baseball. So why are Utah fans running around continuously acting like they're still above the Big 12? They're better than the Big 12, yet on the field, on the court, they haven't done anything to equal this vitriolic response that we're continuously getting.
Isn't that a clinical inferiority complex? That's how I would answer it.
You said it best, sir.
I'm just asking you a question.
Well,
that's what it has always seemed to us.
If they would have played for a Big 12 championship and they would have been in the CFP, then maybe you can have an argument as to, I cannot believe we're still in this truck stop conference.
Yeah, you have to win stuff to say anything. Yeah,
that's just it's mind blowing. So I feel bad for BYU because you've had the Utah thing in the way for quite some time, and now everybody else is seeing the way that Utah acts. They're acting like they walked in this conference with the King Ding-a-ling swinging around like they were OU, and they were going to walk in and be like OU. Then it didn't happen, yet they talk more crap than OU. It's just insane.
I have tons of Utah friends now, and they're very reasonable. They understand what they did to themselves last year. They're chirping and everything else. The reason is because football season starts right after the national championship game in basketball, and spring practice, they are back on to football, and that's where they live. So it's not going to change. Just Big 12, just this is the way they are, right? BYU's a certain way. I certainly own the stuff we do. Kind of weird sometimes, but that's what you get.
The only thing I like about it is we are looking for a new rival. Naturally, it should be Texas Tech, but I'm telling you, with the amount that Utah fans run their mouths 24/7 without a lot of substance behind it, I'm not going to say curse words because I don't curse.
Well, I love Oklahoma State. I would love BYU to be for the ones that want to compete for the championships. Yeah, I absolutely would step into that role if it's if that opportunity is there.
I love it. Well, thank you very much for coming on and
You're
breaking
welcome.
some of this down for all of us. Please let the fine folks out here know how they can get some Nathan Bomber Brown action in their lives.
Sure. So there you go. You can see all my handles. I go by Bomber, then Big 12 Mafia and College Football Mafia is our master brand. I have a team, Wild Ute University, bunch of private video stuff we do for members on realignment. You can tell I'm into the realignment and the governance, and you want the back end of how college football and the business has been working. That's what I've spent 3 years learning about and trying to become educated. And so Bob Thompson, ex-Fox Sports president, is a friend of the show, and that should tell you kind of what we've done. So I would encourage you to pop over on Twitter, follow me, and then go to our main page on YouTube, which is College Football Mafia. Watch the videos that are there. Make sure you hit subscribe. We're pushing for subscribers, Cody.
And I'm not going to let you get out of here without mentioning the fact that you talked about how you have a lot of Utah fans.
I didn't say fans. I get along with a lot
friends,
of Utah people.
Sorry, friends.
Right, yeah.
And I mean, I appreciate what you're doing there, but I'm not going to let you pull the wool over my eyes. What you really meant to say is Wild Ute and his multiple personalities, you get along with quite well.
I love every one of them.
Please tell my Clark Kent looking buddy.
I will.
I say hello. And from Stillwater, we're not loving the Utah fan base, but I still love me some Wild Ute.
Okay, yeah, I think it'll have to grow on people. Just saying.
Something needs to happen. But anywho, brother man, I greatly appreciate your time. As always, your insight. I know that you run in some of those circles, and you don't even have to use the Altamore chart model to accentuate your point.
Now I don't even, I don't care. I literally don't care anymore. So,
well, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, Nathan Bomber Brown is the expert on the topic that we needed because I wasn't going to be able to express all of this correctly. So thank you once again, brother man. It's an absolute pleasure. I cannot wait to have you on the program once again because I know this isn't done growing legs and having issues.
Realignment never sleeps, baby.
Yes, sir. All right, brother man. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it.
You bet.
BYU has been a great partner with the Big 12, unlike their friends down the road. But anywho, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State because you could be anywhere. I'm so happy that you choose to be here. Do me a favor, like it if you like the daggone thing. Dislike it if you don't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast and people out there, you are what has allowed us to become National Pod of the Week. So for that, I will always be ingratiated. Until next time, you know the drill. Later, taters.